This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to a Southeastern Caribbean Disaster Resilience Partnership Resilience in Action Forum. My name is Claire McGrath, and I am the director of SCDRP. So, once again, if you're just joining, please drop your name and affiliation into the chat so we know who's joining us here today. So starting off, I would like to acknowledge and thank our benefactors and partners. Thank you to the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program and NOAA Southeastern Caribbean Regional Collaboration Team, or CCART, for serving as benefactors of SCDRP. We're also grateful to our sustaining and supporting partners. So IEM is a sustaining partner. I know David is on here today from IEM. Thank you, David. And we're also grateful to Moffitt and Nichol and Georgia Tech Center for Sustainable Communities Research and Education for being our supporting partners. SCDRP is a program of SCORA, the Southeast Coastal Ocean Observing Regional Association. And just a quick reminder to mute yourself if if you're not talking. Having some issues with echoes today. So if you'd like to learn more about SCORA, you can visit SCORA's website, which is easy to remember, scora.org. In a few minutes, I'll give everyone an opportunity to share funding announcements, job opportunities, collaboration invitations, any other regional updates. So you can either unmute yourself, you can drop announcements in the chat, whatever you'd like. And I'm going to start us off with a few SCDRP announcements and regional announcements. So first off, to help local leaders mitigate the impacts of extreme heat, the State Resilience Office in the Department of Environmental Quality and the State Climate Office of North Carolina are inviting local governments and their partners in North Carolina to apply for the 2026 to 2027 North Carolina Planning for Extreme Heat cohort. During this cohort, over the course of 5 months, participants will develop a heat action plan for their community. It's a free program. You do have to apply. So there's an informational webinar on Monday, September 14th from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And you can also learn more and sign up for that webinar by scanning the QR code on your screen. The applications are due Friday, September 25th, 2026. Next, I'm sharing a funding opportunity that provides support specifically to rural communities. This grant program, which has a rolling deadline, is designed to provide critical funding and resources to grantees that are taking practical, community-focused, and innovative solutions to implement equitable climate solutions in rural America. This partnership offers general operating support and project support grants to bolster the work of rural-led and rural-serving organizations. And this includes nonprofits, public agencies, religious organizations, or tribal governments. The funding amounts range from 20K to 100K for projects, and then 75K to 150K for general operating support. So you can learn more at that QR code. Again, this will also all be in our newsletter and up on our website. And a reminder that SCDRP has released Stronger Together, Partnerships, Capacity, and Collective Action. This is a report and action plan, which is a culmination of discussions and ideas shared at our Emergency Management Roundtable in Charleston, which was held in March 2026. This report is a resource for the Southeastern Caribbean region and beyond, especially for emergency managers, to illustrate how to strengthen local emergency management capacity, especially in under-resourced or rural jurisdictions. So this report offers key insights on capacity and funding challenges facing emergency managers. It includes ideas to cultivate non-traditional partnerships, action items, and sample frameworks for implementations. So if you haven't already looked at it, please take a look, share it. You can access it at that QR code or on our website. It's right on our homepage. Upcoming events, just a reminder, our next Resilience in Action forum is going to be on August 20th. The speakers will be announced in the next week or two, and we are making the switch from GoToMeeting to Zoom webinar. And so you will be signing up on a Zoom webinar registration form. That form is going to be posted on our website, sent out in our newsletter, on our social media, all the usual places. If you missed our last forum, Navigating Resilience Policy in Today's Environment with Ashley Ward, Director of the Heat Policy Innovation Hub, you can access the recording of the presentation on our YouTube channel and add that QR code in the slide. So I encourage you, if you weren't there, it offered a lot of really good practical strategies that all of us can implement. All right, and finally, I would invite you all, anyone here who has any announcements, you can unmute yourself or drop any announcements or anything that you want to share into the chat. So I'll give everyone a minute. And if you think of something during the webinar, you can also drop it into the chat then, and I'll make sure to pull it for our newsletter and our website. Or you can submit any announcements to our collaboration hub, which is linked at that QR code on the slide. Awesome. Looks like Randall Matthews, hi Randall, will be hiring a new team member for the emergency management team. Will be posted soon in Savannah, Georgia. So we'll be posting that on all of our SCDRP channels. Keep an eye out for that. All right. Well, we have an excellent panel lined up for today. This panel was organized by Emmanuel Maldonado-Gonzalez and Catherine Egan of NOAA Southeast and Caribbean Collaboration Team, NOAA CCART. She's unable to join today, but luckily we have Emmanuel here who will be our moderator, and he'll introduce our panelists, but I will introduce Emmanuel. Emmanuel Maldonado-Gonzalez is an environmental sociologist and a PhD student in integrated coastal sciences at East Carolina University. His research focuses on coastal resilience, sustainable fisheries, community-based aquaculture, and the social impacts of recurring Sargassum inundation across Puerto Rico and the wider Caribbean. He works with universities, government agencies, and coastal communities to develop science-based, equitable solutions for sustainable coastal management. So, Emmanuel, I will pass it over to you to get us started.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for the permission to start sharing real quick. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep, looks great.
Not see you guys. Okay, I appreciate it. Okay, well, thank you, Claire, for that presentation. It's always weird when people introduce myself. That's still something weird for me. I appreciate it. Well, like you said, we're here talking about sargassum. Like we said, it's an emerging coastal hazard in the Caribbean. Obviously, I hope everyone that's here knows what sargassum is. If not, you've seen it, experienced it on the beach, or it's melted, which nobody likes it, but well, it's something that we're getting used to here in the Caribbean. And you can see it there. It's floating algae. And yeah, so what sargassum actually is. It's a brown seaweed algae that floats in the ocean surface in large mats. It never attaches to the seafloor. It's always floating. It's something that, most of history it stayed in one place in what used to be called the Sargassum Sea. But I've seen latest studies that Sargassum Sea is disappearing. Uh, this was a region in the Mid-Atlantic where it's actually healthy habitat for a lot of marine life. But starting around 2011, it changes in wind and ocean currents brought it outside of the region. So it started establishing in the southern part of the coast of Africa, West Africa. So uh, now it's starting bringing or start creating what we now know as the Sargassum Belt that stretches from Western Africa all the way to Gulf America. And all this big algae blooms that's being stretched for 5,000 miles, it's mainly driven by nutrient pollution, washing into the ocean, that warming waters, and it's actually been affecting us all this week. So everyone in the Caribbean has seen the pictures, especially I know Mariana has been busy this week, but all the news of all those huge patches arriving here, which just give it a couple of days, you guys are going to have it in Florida soon, don't worry. So why this has become an emergent disaster rather than just some simple nonsense. So in May 2025, the belt reached 37.5 million tons of seaweed, the largest ever measured at the moment. And currently, 2026 is on the way to breaking that record, with millions of tons already drifting towards Caribbean and Florida. What makes this so hard is the speed it takes. In word-rich nutrient waters, which El Nino is giving us this year, a mat can double its mass in just under 11 days. So when a beach is cleaned on Monday, by the weekend it's already covered with sargassum. So this not one-off event anymore. It's just a season that's stretching more every year. So it's becoming a growing hazard. So when that seaweed piles up, it starts to rot in our beaches. So the damage hits four different fronts. First, it's on public health. It started decomposing. It releases hydrogen sulfide, smells like rotting egg, which causes headaches, nausea, problem breathing, especially for people with asthma or other lung conditions. It starts affecting resident workers. Also, if you're working in extracting that sargassum, you're not wearing the correct equipment, it can start creating rashes in the skin that can get infected and bring in other side effects. So second, it's affecting local economies. So tourists start cancel, hotels lose bookings, fishers can't get their boats out of the marinas anymore, and their equipment is impossible to clear or maintain because of all this piling there. Third, infrastructure. The piles of metal corrode. It clogs water intakes for marinas and energy systems, and cleanup, it starts adding more costs, which is straining municipality budgets and state budgets, and for our coastal ecosystem. So those thick mats, smaller seagrass and coral, which this starts pulling oxygen out of the water, and also starts blocking sea turtles from nesting. So if sea turtles get to the beaches are just piled up with sargassum, they cannot find the sand, or they can just get tied into that anoxic environment. So those aren't separate problems; they're just compounding effects of this hazard that we're experiencing on. So why we decided to focus on Puerto Rico and Virgin Islands? First, geography. Uh, those territories sit right in the belt and the western path. So they're the earliest receiving this huge patches of sargassum. They have the heaviest landings every season. Second, their economies rely deeply into to the coast. We have tourism, we have fishing, just everyday life. It all depends on beaches and waters that sargassum is disrupting. So all of that depends on their everyday lives, like I said. So third, they give us a value comparison. So we have two distinct governance ways of doing governance and policies. They're confronting the same hazard with different resources and authorities. And finally, this is where the real solution has been tested. So these people are being experiencing sargassum every day, so solutions are they're being obligated to find solutions. So they're going to be talking about first, managing and response to Puerto Rico, how the island is monitoring and organizing against this influx. Second, impacts and adaptations in the U.S. and the U.S. Virgin Islands, including work behind the USVI Sargassum blueprint. And they're going to be hearing about community-led responses. Local grassroots solution being built by people living this every day, from recycling seaweed to keeping with fisher resiliency. And now, just with a quick introduction, we're going to have Mariana León Pérez. She's the founder and executive director of Caribe Consulting. She's a researcher scientist who uses interdisciplinary approaches to strengthening community well-being and resiliency to coastal hazards like sargassum in Puerto Rico. Amy Dempsey, she's founder and president of Bioimpact, which is she started in 1986. Trained as a marine biologist, she came to St. Croix as a NOAA aquanaut, and over the last 5 years, she worked at with resorts and on sargassum, and helped produce the USVI Sargassum blueprint. Also, Nicolás Gómez Andújar, which is a marine social scientist and colleague of mine that we've been working for years now. She works with Mujeres de Islas and the Nuclear Fisher Association, where he leads community-based coastal adaptation, oyster farming, sargassum recycling, and fisher resilience. And last but not least, Cedric Morales-Gonzalez, also from Culebra, collaborates also with Mujeres de Islas, and he's the one leading those Sargatopia project, designing and piloting new ways to use sargassum. And please join me to a online applaud or to welcome all of them. Let me stop sharing. So go ahead, Mariana.
Okay, let me know if you're seeing the the presenter view.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you today. And yes, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the from the Puerto Rico perspective, the impacts that we have been observing and the management and response efforts. First, I want to highlight the importance of sargassum as a habitat in the open ocean. It serves as a nursery and habitat for many organisms, including organisms that are importantly commercial important organisms. So it's considered an essential fish habitat, was established by the Caribbean Fishery Management Council. And also, it serves as an habitat for endangered species at listed species. So basically the impacts of sargassum starts to happen when sargassum starts to arrive to the nearshore environments. The first impact that we start to see is that it blocks sunlight that reaches corals and seagrass that are living in the bottom of the ocean, and it also smothers corals and seagrasses in shallow areas or keys. Then, when it starts to accumulate along the shoreline, it also affects mangroves that live there, and it starts to sink. And when it sinks, it then accumulates on top of benthic habitat. So it's also, so there are different impacts depending on the stages of decomposition that happens. It also represents a physical obstruction to nesting sea turtles and hatchlings. But one of the most important impacts, and an impact that lasts for many months, including, is the creation of the Sargassum brown tide. So this is a color dissolved organic matter that is created by the decomposition process of Sargassum, and this causes a reduction in the oxygen that is present in water. Sometimes it can go even to zero, and reduces the light availability, reduces the pH, and has a lot of nutrients. So all of these causes mortality of seagrasses and associated fauna and corals. And sometimes, in the cases, for example, of seagrasses, it can last many years to recover. We have seen in a study that we conducted in Puerto Rico that Sargassum brown tide can be present for many months throughout the year, and even after the presence of fresh Sargassum and the season of fresh Sargassum. So also there are impacts associated with the people that live nearby or work nearby. The first is the exposure to hydrogen sulfide. This is released during Sargassum decomposition, affects the respiratory, neurological, and other systems in us humans. And depending on the quantity, the parts per million, and you can have symptoms. So it's something that needs to be monitored and to do safety protocols to protect the people that is working there or living there. Also, Sargassum has the presence of bacteria and other microbes, including fecal coliforms and human pathogens, including Vibrio species. So it's recommended to use gloves when dealing with Sargassum and avoid the contact when you have open wounds. And if not, then just clean very well your hands afterwards. Also, there's presence of heavy metals in Sargassum, most importantly, arsenic and inorganic arsenic. And this is something that needs to be considered in order to for the uses of Sargassum, potential uses. So it's not something that will limit the use of Sargassum, but it's something that you need to consider and do some lab testing in order to just make sure that you're within the ranges that are safe. So how we know when Sargassum is coming and what is the forecast? There are different tools. One of them is the University of South Florida Sargassum Outlook Bulletin. This is a bulletin that comes every month, and it gives you the information of the current Sargassum state at the region and the forecast, what is expected to happen in the following month. So this is very important information that helps planning the response efforts. Then more locally, we have the caricus.org platform that they have different products. They have one satellite product showing you exactly where Sargassum is using satellite images, but also they have these other tools that have a forecasting of where Sargassum might move depending on currents and winds, and also where Sargassum might accumulate along the shoreline. So this is very useful tools for planning and the response efforts. So moving now to, I'm going to talk a little bit of everything, but just moving to the permitting and regulatory framework in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico has a shared jurisdiction between with the local and the federal government, and therefore there's the two must be considered. That's the case also for the U.S. Virgin Islands, and the permitting requirements depend on the activity, location, and affected resources. I'm going to give you some information about that. And in Puerto Rico, the Department of Natural and Environmental Resources is the agency that leads the response efforts. And they have a protocol for the management of Sargassum, and basically it's the guide that they use for the response efforts in Puerto Rico. I also wanted to just mention that in 2025, the governor of Puerto Rico declared a state of emergency by executive order, and we believe it is still in place because it has been continuing, And there are other tools, other regulatory tools. And for example, in the U.S. Virgin Islands, a state of emergency was declared, but at the federal level with the Stanford Act. Maybe Amy will talk a little bit more about that. But so there are different ways to deal with this. So I'm going to show you here, just if you're curious about the permitting and regulatory framework. There are two publications. The first one is trying to understand the sargassum management regime in Puerto Rico, and you can find very useful information there about that. And then the last one we work involves more other areas, not only Puerto Rico, but other areas in the US. So yeah, just very useful information if you're dealing with that. And finally, I want to talk a little bit about what Caribe we are doing regarding sargassum projects in Puerto Rico. We have a project with the Department of Natural Environmental Resources to help them develop a sargassum mitigation plan. We are identifying the impacts of sargassum in Puerto Rico, assessing the current state of sargassum management, and providing recommendations to strengthen their response. We are also working with NOAA and COS HAB event response program. We have a project that we're visiting different areas around Puerto Rico. I'm going to show you in a bit the map. And the idea is to expand monitoring efforts and to provide the DNER with information that they need for making informed decision about managing sargassum. So we are documenting and analyzing how much sargassum is arriving, the water quality impacts that it has, and the species that are arriving, and also we are sending samples to the lab to analyze heavy metal content. So yeah, we are currently working on these two projects. This is the map of the locations that we are visiting. In yellow, we have areas that we only focus on heavy metal analysis, and in red we have the others that are more comprehensive sampling. So we're doing that in the course of a year. So with that, I'm going to finish. Please let me know any questions, and you can reach out to me by email. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mariana. Amy.
Let me see. Escape. Okay.
If I can get to where my mic is. Now, this is, now I'm seeing do you guys see my presentation? It seems to be in an odd, it seems to have popped in a strange place for me on the screen.
Your presentation, yeah.
Let me see if I can get it into, slideshow now. Okay, there we are. And if everybody can see this, I think that's great. Amy Dempsey with Bioimpact, and as they were kind of briefly saying, I am up to my ears in this right now. And I have to say, this is by far the worst I've seen it in the last 5 years. We are getting slammed in the Virgin Islands. It is causing us great problems. It's amazing, you know, how bad it is. And it's building up in St. Croix, St. Thomas. I was over in St. Croix earlier this week, and it was building up on the North Shore out at Carambola. It was like, you're going, what the heck? And it's building up, in great mats. It's very thick, and where we've been very successful over time to basically be able to get methods to keep it from coming ashore. I mean, there's places, and you can see I'm standing. This is where I'm standing here, is just a little bit to the west of Sapphire Beach, and I was able to walk out more than 25 feet without getting my feet wet. It was that hard built up along the shoreline, and the problem is when it gets this thick, it doesn't particularly, even with when the seas and everything changed, it takes quite a bit for it to be able to be moved out, and that's just, it's really, you know, causing quite a mess. Now, last year, and well, actually it was earlier this year, last inundation, we had some really horrible ones. We've had barriers out at Ritz-Carlton, at both the Ritz-Carlton Club and connecting all the way across the bay. We pretty much cover completely across Great Bay. And it got so bad, and you can see where the, you know, because it's that dark color now, it built up several hundred feet behind the curtains, and it was so grounded we weren't able to get it ashore, and it started coming over, and it was just, you know, it was a really bad situation, but we were able to eventually get it taken care of. And we're like, okay, it's not, it couldn't possibly get worse than that. Well, it's gotten worse than that. So, you know, we're now dealing with a situation where it's worse than it was last year. And as you look at this, you know, what happens? I mean, you know, this is killing everything inshore, like Mariana was saying. I mean, it's smothering the corals. It's grinding out the seagrass where there is seagrass, because you've got this mat moving back and forth where it's sanding the bottom. You know, anything that gets through to nest, its hatchlings are never going to get back into the sea because they could never get across this. So it's just becoming a double whammy. And we have seen in the course of monitoring these things and you know, trying to keep the barriers up, everything. I mean, we've seen the baby turtles in it. We've seen sargassum fish. We've seen, you know, we're finding tons of baby lobsters in it. So, and of course they're all coming ashore. You know, it's getting washed into the shore. It's getting, you know, some of it's getting collected, but all these animals, once they get into the shallows, they don't have a chance. I mean, the DO goes to zero, because I'm sure that's what Mariana's finding too. You have no oxygen in the water anymore as it decomposes, and the smell is absolutely horrific. Now, I found this, one of the young ladies, Leslie Henderson, who works for me, she went out to the beach to check something, and this is out on the south shore of St. Croix. And I dove around this point, and there are shallow corals, or there were shallow corals on this point. And so you're looking at buildups like this, and, you know, even a couple of days, we're now going to see the animals are no longer going to be viable. Now, I've been working with this since really, I was originally brought in 2000, excuse me, as somebody who's a little bit older than you got most of the people on this call. Now, the 1900s is not very long ago to me, but when I was first brought in 19, I came in to look at somebody had illegally put out some barriers, and it really, I mean, and I understand why they were trying to do what they were doing, but it really showed how important it is to, when you start implementing some of these methods, that you actually, you know, get permits, you deal with the government, you deal with the agency, you deal with people that know what they're doing, because, and I'll show you a picture in a second, they had put out anchors and stuff, and they were damaged. They were damaging ESA corals. They had blocks that were bouncing on top of ESA corals, and also just the sheer engineering. They had put out blocks and anchors that were not big enough and heavy enough to sustain the weight that was coming in. And as we started looking at this, you know, we saw, yes, the barriers can work. So we were lucky enough to get some trials, and we tried different barriers and different things and came up with the solutions that actually worked very well and were able to contain the different barriers. And you'll appreciate this one. One of the issues, of course, that we ran into with the hotels and stuff, and let me tell you, all of this has been privately funded. What we've been doing with all these barriers, these are hotels or condominiums that are trying to protect their beach, because for example, Ritz-Carlton several years ago, when it first started getting bad, they literally had to close the hotel between the smells of the hydrogen sulfide and the fact that you couldn't go out to the beach. They had to close the hotel. So they were willing to spend the money to try to look at different things. And one of the things that became a criteria, which we got to, is to get more attractive barriers, because, you know, when you have people taking bridal pictures on the beach, you don't want to be seeing these bright orange barriers with the balls. And so we ended up going with a blue barrier, which is still my favorite because it works just as well, and you really do not see it when you're going offshore. So we have been extremely successful in Great Bay up until this year. It's still being successful, but not like it was. But one of the things that you see when this happens is that one of the things we really tried to do, and we worked with DPNR about, was if we were going to direct the sargassum, if we were going to try to, you know, collect it, we could not send it down current onto someone else's property. We couldn't make something better for our client for an area and then have it hurt something else worse. So, you know, we've been working with directing the sargassum to one area and then cleaning it up. And quite frankly, wherever you direct it to, you're sacrificing. It is going to get totally shredded. So we also found that the barriers were great, but we also had to make catch fences that actually went to the bottom, because when it comes ashore, if you just have the barriers, first, you can't bring the barriers all the way in because they drag the bottom. There are barriers that have 24-inch curtains, 48-inch curtains, and you can even get longer curtains if you need them. But we've typically found the 24-inch skirts are sufficient. But then when you go into the shallows, you need a catch barrier to make it actually, to be able to bring the stuff in. And as you can see, we were able to very successfully do this. As you can see, their beach is beautiful. The sargassum is all on one end. And they were very lucky that where the sargassum builds up and gets cleaned up, the wind blows the smell into an area. Fortunately, that doesn't go on anybody else, but goes back out to the open ocean. But this was something we were able to do and make it work really well. And there, like I said, this year we're having a lot of problems. We've had extremely high tides. The sargassum is dying and sinking, and you can see here it's built up, and a lot of it has been able to escape under. And I just wanted to see, we really are, when they're cleaning it up and taking it away, they are really messing up a small area of the beach. They just have to sacrifice that. Now, we also we've been working in some areas and trying to protect a marina, that the issue here is that it's got hard bottom. So whereas in Ritz and everything, it was sandy, we could put in screw anchors, and we could do it it didn't have a lot of impact. But in a situation like this, suddenly we're dealing with hard bottom. And this is what I was telling you, what I looked at early on, is that somebody had used regular dampered anchors and had drug and flipped up corals, or then they put out these anchors that probably weighed 200 pounds, but they didn't realize what the uplift was of the curtains and the weight of the sargassum coming in, because it gets pretty horrific. And we tried different curtains, different layouts when we started doing trials later, and it worked well. We were able to direct the sargassum, but again, because we did not want the sargassum to go downstream onto somebody else, we made sure we captured it and collected it. Now, this worked really well and everything went really well until they, about 2 years ago, a storm came up, which one of the things is as we go through permitting on these, they have very strict requirements of what they have to do. They have to, you have to have it out of the water come a storm. You have to, have monitoring over time. And, as we all know, this gets expensive after a while. And so they started cutting corners, and they had hired somebody to take it out before a storm. The person's broke. And then suddenly they did not have enough time to get it out. And they had their barrier break loose and damage ESA corals, and ended up getting a fine, which was, because they did not follow what they were supposed to do in their permitting. And then, we're going through looking at new, better ways to enforce things and how to make things work. So in this process, because the sargassum hasn't stopped and they aren't allowed to put out barriers, and this is just to show you, we went to great lengths of figuring out how to put out barriers, how to have floated lines for you don't end up with ropes hitting things, or, you could have, double protections. And it was, you have to figure these things out in design, which is one reason that we went through all the trials. But as things went on, they've got to let hard bottom out offshore. So I said, can we try something else? And we got them to put down the side of their dredge channel, which of course has no corals, and if anything comes loose, nothing's going to get hurt. We put in a barrier along the side of the channel and caught the sargassum coming down the coastline, and then are directing it into one of their boat slips, and it is going into a conveyor and being picked up. And this works great when it's relatively calm, but when we start getting waves of over 2 foot, you can imagine it just throws the sargassum over the barrier, and they still get it into the marina. So this is a work in progress, but this was a great solution as we still try to work out how to really put out something in an area that's hard bottom. I mean, they're drilling pins into the bottom now and all of that. But the one thing people don't really comprehend is how much weight is coming in the sargassum, how much it pushes against the curtains. And we at Ritz, because we have up the catch fence, what's happened there is so much weight builds up against it that sometimes it knocks, it pushes over I-beams, because you get such a buildup with the waves. So, this is a work in progress. And one of the questions that was asked a little bit earlier, is the state of emergency still in progress? We had a state of emergency declared particularly for St. Croix, because what was happening was that the seawater intake for the freshwater source for St. Croix was getting completely blocked. And that was in a really bad position because it wasn't somewhere where you could put barriers and direct it around, because it basically, that's where everything came to and stopped. And we looked at doing bubble curtains there, and we started talking with the manufacturers, and when they really realized what we were up against, they were going, yeah, that's really not what this is for, because they work really well when you have small openings and things like that. But if you get something building up where it's just going to push against it, it would not be a good solution. So we're still trying to figure out what to do there and how to make, we're still messing with that. But I've been now tasked to look at something else, is that, as you can see, this is the Crown Bay cruise ship port in St. Thomas. And if you see, look on the right here, you can see what's happened. Oops, sorry about that. I did not mean for it to. On the right, you can see what's happening here is that you can see the sargassum is building up right against the shoreline where the cruise ship is. And it gets there and it rots. And you can imagine nobody wants to be shopping in that village. It's offensive. I mean, it's disgustingly the way it smells in there. So, we need to try to figure out how we can stop the sargassum from going in there. And I'm going to say, okay, since the bubble curtains didn't work for blocking the sargassum, maybe I can use bubble curtains for directing sargassum and getting it to continue down into the channel, back up and out into the open ocean. And we're also going to maybe potentially look at water jets, something we can, push it to keep it offshore. But, this is, here we go. This is a different situation, which really comes down to what the issue is we see on every single site. Nothing is the same. The sargassum moves because of the wind, because it has the little sails that stick up, the currents, and the waves. We have a site on St. Croix Divi Hotel where the current and the wind is one direction, but the waves come over the reef the other direction. And you can look at all the Google Earth aerials and you see a crosshatch of waves right in front of the hotel. What do you do there? And I mean, and their beach is such that they're at the verge of closing the hotel because guests don't want to be there. But where we're being able to get funding and money to do these things are from economic private entities, and that's great. But the problem that we need to look at is what's being impacted just isn't economic interest people. As Mariana was saying, we're killing corals, we're stopping turtles, we're tearing up seagrass, and this isn't going away. And where are the funds? What can we do to try to protect those resources? We're already losing corals hand over fist, with heat and the diseases, and now we've got this to the shallow corals. So yeah, this is not an easy one, but I think what I really like is that it's become a focus and people are paying attention, and I think we can find at least a way to try to abate some of these impacts. And I really look forward to hearing everybody's questions, and if anybody has any questions or wants pictures and or anything, I am happy to share. And because this is a problem that's going to take all of us to fix.
I agree with you, Amy. Thank you. Now we have Nicolás and Cedric.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Amy. That was excellent. Very useful information. We definitely need more learning exchanges on sargassum permitting BMPs. Yeah.
It's just like, we've got to think outside the box. I hate foresight, but we've got to think, that's why, I'm just trying to think of anything, because now, now I've got that place at Crown Bay, which I can't put anything on the surface. Cruise ships are coming in, tankers are coming in, but it's causing big economic harm.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Should we take it away, Manuel?
Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So my name is Nicolás Gómez, and with me is my friend and colleague, Brandon Cedric. We're going to be splitting this presentation. And we're going to talk a little bit, shifting from problems towards some solutions that we're trying to implement locally. It started Utopia, an utopia of Sargasso, trying to look at things positively amidst all the challenges that we have, right? So just to situate ourselves, we are located between the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. We're a small island municipality, less than 2,000 full-time residents, a touristic economy as well, and also heavily dependent on fishing, both commercially and as a cultural tradition. I come from a fishing family, and we're gonna see how this has influenced our approach towards our solutions. So I really want to highlight how we have compounding crises, right? And we've talked about the environmental, ecological impacts of sargasso accumulating in the near shore, in our beaches, as well as the human economic health impacts as well. So we definitely have that. Here are some pictures of This in Flamenco Beach, one of the most touristic and economically valuable beaches in Puerto Rico, as well as some nearshore mangroves and coral reefs that are very important for our commercial fisheries. And they're threatened habitats and critical, they're designated as critical, right, for conservation purposes. And then right in the middle, then we also have a chronic problem of sedimentation from watershed erosion and runoff. There's been a lot of watershed restoration in this island. We have highly erodible soils. We have land use practices that are not sustainable, that clear cut, or that don't follow the best practices for erosion control. And that has tremendous impacts in our coral reef and seagrass ecosystems, which we've been spending millions of taxpayers' dollars in restoring. And so we looked at both these problems simultaneously, and in our small community organization, Mujeres, Islas, which we focus on agroecology and just community services in general, we decided to use Sargassum in a way that can address both of these persistent challenges. And I also wanted to bring in the perspective of the fishing impacts, right? So I am the secretary of the Fishing Association, and I've had multiple commercial fishers come to me with what we already know from the literature and the regional experience on how Sargasso reduces their fish catch, both in pelagic fisheries, but also near shore. It hampers and hinders the access to boats, to jetties, to ramps going off. And so there's a physical barrier in the ports. There's also a lot of documented impacts to propellers, and that increases the effort and the cost of fishing. And it simply reduces catch as well. And overall, it's been documented for Puerto Rican fisheries how this leads to impacts in well-being. So working with the fishing community, how can we turn this into a local solution, right? Here are a bit of the reuse opportunities, products that have been documented regionally for Sargasso. I'm sure you're aware, but I want to highlight that we can do things with this resource, including paper, including animal feed, cosmetics. It's been used for fertilizer in many places, including Barbados. And we definitely need to test the pros and cons and trade-offs and potential health risks of these uses. But there are a lot of true and tried options out there, such as using it as filters to remove pollutants from water specifically. And there's other islands that are harnessing biofuel, or harnessing Sargasso to create biofuel and biogas. Here in Puerto Rico, there's been some really promising approaches. They're still in the research phase, such as biodegradable fabrics and batteries. But we focused on a very low-tech solution inspired by the Sarga block in Mexico, which they built houses out of mud bricks and Sargasso that have withstood hurricanes and are still standing almost 10 years later. And from this inspiration, we've collaborated with the universities and colleagues in building designs and architecture and planning into our community plan, which you can scan in this QR code, which we've named Sargatopia. And so we've looked at the collection, transport, processing, and building and exporting of these Sarga blocks from our small little island. And from here, both with manual and a small scale infrastructure, but also looking into the future and how we can scale this up, right? And from here, I will lead my colleague to explain a little bit of what he's leading.
So for right now, what we're doing with the project called Sargatopia is that we're trying to collect the sargassum that's been collecting on our beaches and trying to mix it with dirt that has a lot of clay in it to create these low-cost blocks. So the first thing we do is that so far what we've done is we've gone to to our beaches. We usually there's already a bunch of sargassum that's already dry on the shores. We can also collect the wet sargassum, but that takes at least 24 hours to dry out. So we usually just get the sargassum that's already dry. Then we, after it's dried out, we then collect dirt that has enough clay in it. You don't want a mixture that's purely clay or purely dirt. It has to be a good mix of both, because that's basically what's going to help the sargassum stick with itself. And then after that, you put it in a press to like squeeze out the excess water. As you can see there in the slide, you basically want to use it in that formation. So yeah, as you can see, we collect the sargassum. It doesn't matter if it's wet or dry. If it's wet, you can just dry it out. Then you collect the dirt. We usually collect it from public roads where there's been construction. And then you mix in the sargassum with the dirt, just adding water. It's basically as if you were creating cement, basically. You can use a mixer, or you can just use a shovel, mix it with your hands, as long as you've got gloves and proper equipment. And then after you mix it, you just let it dry. Usually takes about 2 to 3 days to dry out, depending on the weather and the temperature. But once it dries out, you'll just have like a little block there that you can use to prevent erosion, as well as using as a place for plants to grow next to. So here you can see that with our blocks, we've been experimenting. We've made some blocks where the sargassum has been shredded. We've made some blocks where the sargassum hasn't been shredded at all. We just dried it out and looked at that. And we also made blocks where we mixed in at least 10% of cement in them. We're just trying out to see which blocks can become, which blocks are essentially more resistant to the rain and all the erosion that's happening. But of course, we're looking for things that are environmentally safe as well. We also made these, basically these wattles. If you see in the top right there, that's essentially dry sargassum rolled into a net, and that's used to prevent more erosion. It has the same function as the blocks. Usually the blocks right now weigh about 5 pounds thanks to our mold. And there you can see that we have on the left, you can see there's a site where we experimented to see how much the blocks can hold against the sedimentation. And on the right, you can see we put a bunch of blocks to hold in the dirt for one of the plants that we're testing as well for the stabilization of a garden. Right now, the blocks have been holding about 3 inches of dirt every time there's a rainfall. It depends on how much rainfall there is in the first place, but usually it holds up quite a good amount. And you can see here, we also use because we're trying to be as environmentally friendly as possible, we use a solar-powered golf cart to transfer these blocks as well. There you can see we have testing the effectiveness and soil retention. So after the rain, it usually holds up about 3 inches. So that's 3 inches every rainfall so far. What we noticed is that the blocks mixed with cement have been holding up very well. Meanwhile, the shredded and the unshredded have been holding up. They've been holding up as well, but not as good as the ones mixed with cement. But even after a few months, they've still been holding their shape very well.
Thank you, Cedric. And so, as you can see, these we're trying to get low cost, accessible solutions, and scale them up, right? And they're accessible for our community, mostly our fisher folk, people that can work on this. But we're trying to scale it up, and so we're also collaborating with different universities, including the California College of the Arts, on how we can more effectively create these blocks faster, or maybe different products with 3D printing, and see how we can turn this into a community business someday. And with that, I will talk a little bit about next steps. We have a guide on how to make these blocks and our recommendations based on these initial experiment and some future testing we want to do, both with durability of the blocks and how much weight they can hold. We, as highlighted with Amy and USVI experience, we need to find ways to permit for in-water Sargassum collection beyond our beaches. This is a picture of Ensenada Honda Bay, where it affects our tourism and our restaurant businesses right there on the waterfront. And yes, looking ahead, we're also looking to pilot the sales of these blocks and wattles for watershed restoration activities. And so thank you very much for your attention, for your time, and hopefully we can look towards solutions that are collaborative in the future. We have a lot of chickens here, by the way. I don't know if you can hear them.
I'm listening to the chickens complaining about sargassum to your presentation, but that's good, Nico. Thank you. I had a couple of questions for you guys, but I'm just going to keep it simple because I know people are interested and they're submitting a lot of questions in the chat. So I'm just going to have one question for Amy and Mariana. So sargassum has gone from a occasional, like I said, like a occasional nauseance to a recurrent seasonal event. So from each of your point of view or work, has there what has been the hardest part of that shift? The volume itself, the fact that our systems are not built for this type of disaster, or something that or something else? I don't know if you get the question. Either or, Amy or Mariana.
I missed the first part of your question, so can you repeat that?
Yeah.
So what has been the hardest shift of managing this type of disaster? Either the volume or the fact there's something that we're not used to anymore, even though it has been 15 years, it's something that we're still not getting used to.
Amy can give more information, for sure, on the hands-on management. But I can say that at least Puerto Rico, was not prepared to we didn't have anything similar to that happening in the past, and that things like policies and all of that take more time than the actual response that you need. So I think that we have been very slow at responding, and many more. The private sector has been able to do more, and I think that's what Amy can show.
Well, the issue is that getting permits. I mean, we're not prepared for it. That really comes down to it. It came out of nowhere, and we want to talk about just controlling it. We seem to be able to control it fairly well if it's a moderate amount. The minute it peaks and gets huge, it's a real struggle. And what's the best way to deal with it? But there was no real permitting mechanism to address it. And so I was really lucky because both Army Corps and CZM worked with us and said, go out and do the trials, see what you can do to figure it out. And it allowed us to play with some things, and then we were able to permit it. But this is something we need, and this is one of the things that I stressed in the blueprint. We need permitting mechanisms for this. We need structures completely developed, And, you know, and I even actually wrote up kind of like a little draft of, if you have hard bottom, this is the best way to approach it. If you have seagrass, this is what you should do. If you have sand bottoms, and you can do this. But we need to have a nationwide from Army Corps addressing this. JAXFO, you know, which of course now we're no longer in Jacksonville, so now I guess we'll have to figure out what we're going to call our biological opinion. But it is impacting, Sargassum is impacting endangered species, and when we clean it up or block it, we're impacting endangered species, and we don't even know which. We know we're affecting the turtles. You know, I'm sure we're affecting Nassau grouper. I'm sure we're affecting the other animals. We don't really have great data on it yet, but we need to be able, in our current permitting structure, we need to develop permitting mechanisms and guidelines where we don't have people go out and do like what I've seen people do, you know, put down blocks and they're smashing all over things because they don't know any better. Because if you have clear guidelines that say, hey, you know, these, you know, if you have this, do that, this is the permit you need to get, we'll work with you. Here's, you know, Fish and Wildlife can help you with this. You know, CZM can tell you, DNR can tell you what you should be doing. There are some solutions, but there certainly aren't enough solutions, and it certainly is not economically reachable by a lot of people. And the minute we can make Sargassum monetize it, the minute we can make it have a value, like what Nicolás and those guys are trying to do, the minute that happens, suddenly we get a lot more help, and you see people coming up. We can get it, but we've got to somehow fund that. We somehow have to fund the collection of sargassum without hurting, and try to minimize its negative impact. And I truly think the best way to save the most things is going to be to figure out how to collect it offshore. Because once it gets inshore, everything's trapped, and then there's nothing for them to breathe, and you know, it just runs down the road.
Yeah, I agree with that, Amy. I'm just gonna add real quick. The reason I decided to work with Sargassum because Sargassum was getting in every single project I'm working on. You mentioned that the Nassau grouper, and I have a project monitoring Nassau grouper in King Kong. They're in their habitats, and their sites we haven't been able to monitor in almost 2 years because Sargassum just getting there every time, and the water coloring is not improving. So I cannot have divers get in to see if there's species there. We're just taking water samples and leaving because the water is so anoxic. So it's affecting the life. Also working with Nico in Culebra, we see a lot of dead fish sometimes where the dispatchers are coming. And it's affecting something that the way Culebra Bay is designed, Sargassum will just keep piling in and not flushing out. But since the Navy decided to cut half of the island, it created its own flushing system that it was a problem in the past, but now it's becoming something that's helping the system. So at least we have a solution that wasn't meant for that. We have a solution for the sargassum flushing in. But sargassum affecting also navigation. We haven't mentioned it. Every time I know the guys go fishing around Puerto Rico, even Mariana might add when she's taking water samples, navigation is harder if you have small vessels because sargassum is getting into motors. So you got to stop more time to flush it out. Amy, you were saying just about that in the ramp. I remember one of our calls. Sargassum is everywhere. We cannot avoid it. Yeah, I'm just gonna go for a quick question. Victor Diamato had a question about could sargassum be collected and used to support the creation in marshland? I don't know if someone wants to respond it or I can do it. Mariana, I don't know if you want to add something for that.
Go ahead with you.
I know there's some projects in Puerto Rico that are doing it to help during restoration. They're just mixing it with the sand or other materials so you can have some biomaterial there so the donor creation can go faster. Downside is if you need to take samples of that sargassum because you're also adding heavy metals and everything that's in the sargassum into those beaches. So that's something you will need to monitor.
Yeah, and also I want to add that so I was in a workshop the other day where there were a lot of people working with sea turtle monitoring, and one of the persons that work with that mentioned that we have to be careful with using sargassum in coastal restoration areas, in areas where there's sea turtle nesting,
Wow.
because they have been seeing fungus, fungus and other deterioration of the quality of the egg, so of the eggs, and so impacts of sargassum on the eggs that are being laid. So I also have so you're bringing nutrients to that dune, and you're changing the system there. So yeah, just something to consider, to have in mind.
Yeah, and I would say one of the things that is, because you really need to look at it, is because if we're like using the sargassum as fertilizer or using it repeatedly, you're basically you're putting more and more of the arsenic or whatever heavy metals are there. So we've really got to look at that, which comes to another thing. Something sargassum is great for is absorbing things like oil, heavy metals, pollutants. So, hey, let's make cleanup booms out of it, and then of course, then you clean it up, but then what do you do with it? I mean, it's like, we're kicking the can down the road, but there's so many things to consider, and this is brand new, and it ain't going away. It's going to be something we'll be dealing with our entire lifetimes.
Nico, I know you responded to one of the questions in the chat, but I don't know if you want to say it out loud so everyone can.
Yeah, so another project we're working locally is the first permitted oyster farm in Puerto Rico. And we have seen periods of low oxygen, anoxic environments when there's sargasso accumulation and decomposition. And we haven't fully tested it statistically, but we think that has impacted mortality of the oysters. And there was another question related to health impacts that we've had working with Sargasso. Cedric, I'll answer for you if that's okay. Thankfully, we haven't had any chemical reactions. I think mainly because we're working with low volumes, and we're already working with the Sargasso that's dry in the beach, because we're not permitted to collect in the water. And so we're not really dealing with leachiates. But we did find out about best practices from Mariana's and DNER's workshop recently. And so we definitely need more of that. We need more education on how we can protect human health.
Yeah, just basic gloves should be fine enough. But also, when you're shredding the sargassum, it is recommended to at least wear a mask to make sure you're not getting any particles in there as you're breathing it in, or any of the dirt either. But for now, at least in a small scale, just basic safety equipment like gloves and masks should be enough, and also wash your hands.
Yeah. So there's one here about the legal regime about collecting sargassum. I think Nico and Mariana already mentioned it. It's difficult to get the permits. Systems are not used to it. Also, you mentioned it. I don't know, Mariana, if you want to add something, because I know you did.
Yeah. Yeah. So there, we have worked together. Amy has worked as well with that previous the CARUA 2025 overview of the regulatory framework. So there's some information there about what are the different regulatory framework and permits related to different strategies on water, on land, etc. So that's a good source of information. But basically, if you're in the water and you are not disturbing the sediments below, you will need basically to reach out to the local government and see what are the permits there. But regarding the federal aspect, you will need to do a consultation with NOAA NIMS to ask if there's the need for technical assistance for Section 10 Amy, I'm correct, right? I don't have it from me. Yeah. So yeah, just to see if you need an incidental take permit for the ESA species. Yeah.
Yeah. Following that question, I know that at the federal level, governmental agencies have to work together with Puerto Rico and USVI. But is there any collaboration between state governments, between both territories? Mariana, that you know, or Amy?
That I know, like officially, I think between us, between Amy and I.
We work together.
On official partnerships, nothing at the state level. Yeah.
Not. Yeah. I have to. This is so new. I think everybody's scrambling because it is having a significant economic effect on both islands, whether it be for fisheries or hotels. And I think it's something. I mean, it would be wonderful if we could do that, but really, the Caribbean, we need to get we need to all work together in the whole Caribbean. I mean, it's the way it should be because we're all being impacted the same ways, and and it's huge, but especially between Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, we need to come, because our governments are very, very similar. We're dealing with the Army Corps of Engineers and the federal agency, the same, and DNER and and DPNR are very similar agencies. So it would be great if they could work together.
Yeah, hopefully in the near future, at least under this issue, if we can find some common ground working together. Other than that, I know somebody has a question here related to FEMA. I know FEMA can declare Sargassum a disaster, but as I'm aware, FEMA has not declared it in any of the territories. I don't know if Amy or Mariana. All these at state level has disaster been declared, nothing related to FEMA, right?
Well, in the USVI, it is the only.
Was it FEMA the one that declared it?
Yeah. Well, the local. It starts with the local government and then the federal government.
Yeah, because it was able. They did that declaration, similar to how we have hurricane disaster funding, and to try to be able to get money to federal funds to help us try to address, because it was affecting it was having a significant impact on human health because it was stopping the production of drinking water. So that's the way we went down on that route. And, it's one of those, I hate to say it, it's kind of one of those things like always happens with the government. Everybody spent a good deal of time talking about what would and wouldn't work. And we still don't have a solution how many years later. And nothing's, we keep on being lucky and it hasn't been blocked again, but we've been just relying on luck because it will happen again.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, and we wish our government would be more diligent on that. And that's what talking with agencies. I don't know if Mariana even can add to that. They still cannot figure it out. We have multiple agencies. We have multiple people looking at the same issue, but we still haven't found a way to collaborate in seeing sargassum as an interdisciplinary issue. They're still working on it from multiple fronts rather than seeing it as a different issue. And declaring it as a hazard, it will help find it to work as something interdisciplinary. Mariana, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think now working closely with the DNER on developing this mitigation plan, I can see how challenging it is. You have an agency that has less employees than before, that have limited amount of money, that has a lot of other issues to deal with, and you have one person, like doing many things not related to sargassum. That's just one of the topics, and so it's really challenging. I know there's people that want to do a good job, but obviously there's limitations. So yeah, we'll have to find ways, to
it takes
contribute.
Yeah, the agencies are short-staffed. The bottom line is, and yes, this is a huge problem, but they're drug in different directions, and this isn't the primary one. So it really is going to take groups like what we're doing, because that's what's going to drive it. That's what's going to end up, having it work, because, we've got to this has got to be addressed, because we're going to be dealing with this 10 years from now to 100 years from now. Hopefully it will be done, but 10 years from now we'll still be dealing with the same thing. And we've got to figure out a solution, or you're going to have fishermen out of work, you're going to have hotels closed, you're going to, it's going to have a devastating impact on the Caribbean.
Yeah, and again, still not everything is negative. There's something like what Mujeres de Islas doing. There's an industry that will thrive around that. So I see other parts of the Caribbean, other than blocks, they're doing biofuels, they're doing textiles, they compacting it and using to build like something similar to cork. So there are alternatives there. We just need to find investors, more people interested in doing that, and at least Mujeres de Islas and Nico and Brando are finding partners that can collaborate and being integrated on that. I think it's a question more for Mariana. What is the amount of time you need to remove, the amount of time you have to remove sargassum before it becomes before it becomes decomposed into brown tide? I know it depends on the coast, but
yeah, there are different factors. I have seen everything. It's different. It's different if you have sargassum accumulated on a beach versus on mangroves versus a marina. So it depends, but I will say that in general, and Amy can give more also what she has seen in the areas that she's working. But in general, I've seen like between days and a week, maybe you can start to see that brown tide developing. But in areas, in mangroves, for example, is crazy. You can have that happening, and then keep sargassum keeps stays within the roots of the mangroves and in the bottom, and you can have that happening for months. You can have the season of sargassum happen in the summer of previous year, and then in March of next year you're still having brown tide. So it depends on the area.
Yeah. And the water, it gets hot. You can feel the heat. I mean, just like on shore, if you go stick your hand in the piles and the decomposition, it's hot. And one of the things we've had in the Virgin Islands, because we're throwing it away, which is it was one of those things. There's all these things. I have slides too showing in St. Croix, because they've been collecting it and dumping it at the landfill. And there's beautiful piles of white sand, which were accidentally collected with the sargassum, which are now, at the landfill. We're throwing away sand. But it's amazing that we keep on having fires at the landfill, because it dries and becomes it gets so hot in the mats that we've had fires start because of it. So sometimes the landfill says, eat, you can't bring any for a while. And then that's another real problem.
So yeah, we have 5 minutes left here. I don't know if anyone wants to add one last comment or open it to the chat. Everyone wants to turn on their microphone to say something. Mariana, go ahead.
Yeah, I just saw that there was a question related to if there's a list of
oh yeah, sorry, I missed that one.
Universities, nonprofits that are working on sargassum as part of at least for Puerto Rico, as part of the plan, the project that we have with DNER, we're doing a list. So we hope that by the end of the year or so, we will have that list ready. And also, there was a question related to the species that are arriving and seasonality of sulfide and heavy metals, etc. So at least, I don't know if you're referring to the species, Sargassum species, but we have in Puerto Rico, and we have in these booms of pelagic sargassum, we have Sargassum natans and fluitans happening. So we are looking at that and looking at the seasonality of those the three morphotypes. And so we will have that data as well with the NOAA HABS program, and we will look at the seasonality of heavy metal content and the water quality. So we are working on that. We don't have the data yet completely, but we will hope to have it ready by the end of the year.
I think Ana Grisanti sent a comment, and it's more directed to Amy. We haven't talked about what's needed for collection. Could you give us a bit of an overview, methods, and considerations on the mechanics and how to collect it? Or is this mostly a manual process or specific special machines? I mean, there's multiple methods. I know in Mexico they're mainly using rigs. But Amy, go ahead. You're muted. Amy, you're muted.
Primarily, they're collecting it manually. Because they found if you collect it, I mean, because they've tried the beach rakes, they've tried all that where they're trying to pick it up off the beach as they're going, but it's picking up so much sand. So you have men collecting, grabbing it in pitchforks, throwing it in the back of a little trailer that are then taking it to the dumpster. But then as it's coming on shore on the beach, they are pretty much doing the same thing. They have, because what we were asked by Fish and Wildlife is wait until it's grounded, then you can pick it up once it's on the shore. So they've been picking it up, but as you saw, it starts piling up and then it stops coming in. So the determination was made, it's on land if it's no longer moving. If it's no longer moving in the waves, you can consider it land and go ahead and take it out. And that was able to keep it coming in. But when they got the super, super heavy inundations, what they started doing was using a small piece of equipment to just reach out and pull it, pull the surface in. That was the way they had a chance. And, it became a real problem because it was sinking and on the surface. And so, it was stopping it from coming in. And that was really hard. Now, they tried using a conveyor similar to the one you saw that they're using at the marina. They tried that, and it wasn't really making much of a dent in that situation because, it's a bigger, wide area. But it's being very successful at the marina because it's channeled in right to it. And I have a couple of videos, but I didn't share for the essence of time, where they have some guys with pull nets pushing it, into the conveyor before it goes up. But right now, it's pretty much all by hand. Years ago, a gentleman bought a wider conveyor to use in a different marina over here, and they found it was super successful, and they picked up everything that was accumulated, but then the actual turning of the conveyor belt was pushing the sargassum away. So it became, more of a difficulty. But I really do think we're going to be able to figure out a way we could somewhat mechanicize it. But what's kind of nice about doing it by hand, at least if, people are grabbing baby turtles while they're still alive and putting them back in the water and things of that nature. So there is some, or like the little lobsters. I mean, people start finding them, then everybody starts looking and stops picking it up. But, it makes it easier to save things, but we've got to find a solution. It's way too big for it to be collected by a guy with a pitchfork who's also breathing it, which is a real problem. Masks are important when you work with this stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. And I think it's a great topic. We got a bunch of problems, possibilities, and I think something to close it real quick. All of us are looking for collaborators because this issue is constantly happening. So we need more effort. We need more people to be interested in collaborating this issue with us here. I appreciate all the panelists. Claire.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you, Emmanuel, for moderating. It was fantastic presentations and discussions. I'd invite presenters and Emmanuel, if you're okay with this, you can drop your name and email into the chat in case folks want to contact you or collaborate. I know that there were a lot of great questions that we didn't get to, but just once again, thank you so much. This was a very timely discussion, and also feel free to send me any of the resources that you shared, and I'll distribute them to our network as well. So thank you, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.